is Sam and welcome back to another episode of Vinyl Bites, where I will be taking a random record from my collection and talk about it in a bite-sized video. Today we'll be talking about Arcade Fire Funeral. I feel like when people start, breaking away from, the mainstream, they stop listening to music that they hear on, the radio and things like that, and they start exploring, some gems that are really out there. I feel like Arcade Fire is one of those bands that people tend to sort of pick up first. Now, my personal introduction to Arcade Fire wasn't actually through this album, it was actually through The Suburbs. Going back to this album and recognizing that it's their first full-length debut record, to have songs that are just so well written and just so engaging and transformative, it's no wonder that they're just held in such high regard. I feel like it's kind of hard to describe the sort of genre of this record. I mean, it's indie rock, but I mean, what does that really even mean? It's rock made by an independent artist. Listening to each song, you feel like you're kind of taken to a world that is familiar, maybe a bit nostalgic. It has this sort of glistened and uplifted facade, but underneath you feel a kind of sadness. On the first half of this record, we have all of the Neighborhood tracks. The opening track, Neighborhood 1, Tunnels, sort of talks about digging a tunnel from my window to yours. It has a sort of childlike innocence to it. I mean, I remember as a kid playing in the sandpit at school with my mates and we were going to dig a tunnel to my house. But this idea of building the tunnel from my window to yours has this kind of idea of wanting to be able to connect to someone, almost like a direct link. A real longing for this connection, which I feel is a very adult theme. So once again, it has this kind of nostalgic looking back feel to it, but it's really a very adult perspective. Or at least that's my take on it. Another excellent track off of this album is Wake Up. The very sort of powerful and emotive singing on this track, you could almost call it like screaming. Once again, just sort of invokes this feeling of being a young child and kind of just screaming out into the world just because you're alive. I remember my first encounter with this song was actually when the trailers for Where the Wild Things Are were on television. Where the Wild Things Are is an incredibly beautiful film about a young boy kind of going on this adventure and really facing a lot of his fears. That film was directed by Spike Jonze, who then went on to make the film Her, where Arcade Fire did the soundtrack for that film. There's a really fantastic live version of Wake Up performed with David Bowie, so I definitely suggest checking that out. It's kind of hard to put into words what each track kind of represents to me, because I feel like really listening to this album, you've got to listen to it as a collective and as a holistic experience. I feel like listening to these tracks on their own, despite them being excellent, kind of would take away from the experience. This is just a really gorgeous gatefold, and on the cover there's this sort of almost like a wooden desk, and the material of the vinyl is a very sort of rough cardboard, so it almost does feel like wood, which really complements this package. You can see the track listing here, and there's this sort of silver ink, or maybe even a type of material that they've been able to stamp into the jacket to give the impression that this feather pen here has sort of made these markings. One thing that is annoying is that Arcade Fire Funeral on the spine here, please focus, there we go, it's written the wrong way. Now, it's like that so it's consistent with the gatefold, with this panel sort of going downwards as such, but it just means that when I put it in my shelf, it's flipped the wrong way, which really pisses off my OCD. You can see here just next to the copy of The Suburbs, it just looks a bit weird. I must say that the vinyl itself, it's really nice and thick, it sounds fantastic. I believe I got this when I was in year 12, but really I've been enjoying the album since my early teens. I think it's just a really beautiful album. It's just one of those records where you listen to it and instead of going and telling your friends about it, you just grab them by the shoulders and shake them and you say, you gotta listen to it, man. And that's how I kind of feel right now. Like, I'm just like, I feel like I should just shut up and just say, go listen to it. For an album that's now, 16 years old, it still holds up really well. It's certainly a lot better than their latest material. I know for me personally, Arcade Fire was really a first step for me in terms of exploring independent music, and I want to know if it was the same for you guys too. So even though I personally feel that they really nailed the nostalgic kind of concept, looking back at your childhood, you know, going through the neighborhood, even though that's the starting point for this band on this album, I do really feel that they perfected it on The Suburbs. However, this album is still brilliant. I'd still give this album a 10. And if this is one of those albums that you still haven't listened to, definitely go check it out. You won't regret it. So that's all I've got to say about Funeral. Make sure you keep on buying your records online. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.